You go to buy a new game on Steam, try to check out, only to see that your payment method is just gone. For millions of gamers in dozens of countries, PayPal no longer works for buying games on Steam. It left everyone asking, what happened? We didn't have an official answer from Valve until just a few days ago. They said it was due to an acquiring bank that terminated service for nearly every single currency except 6 of them. At the time, it seemed pretty obvious that this was in connection to Rule 15, and a list of games getting removed from the platform just due to the timing of it. But I did see some comments from some people who doubted the connection to the Steam censorship, seeing as PayPal still kept its service for multiple currencies. So they thought it was just due to some currency conversion or just some other reason and not actually because of the Steam censorship. But Valve just gave a new response clearing up any confusion. They confirmed that this acquiring bank, which terminated its service, is directly tied to the Mastercard situation. In a statement, they said the reason was specifically regarding content on Steam related to what we previously commented on surrounding Mastercard. This is when acquiring banks and payment processors reached out and told Valve about Mastercard's content rules, but Valve just responded and said that it was legal. This brings up a huge question as many start to realize there are some plot holes in the story. How is it that these acquiring banks and payment processors, who we don't even know the names of, at least yet, knew about specific content on Steam and wanted it removed? The original complainers were an Australian group called Collective Shout, and they didn't go to these acquiring banks. They went to the bigger companies like Mastercard, Visa, and PayPal directly. So how did these banks actually find out? Especially if Mastercard claims that it isn't involved. Well, they have a warning system in place, but it doesn't come directly from Mastercard. Here is how it works. When Mastercard receives a complaint about a company's brand damaging content, like the one from Collective Shout, it doesn't go straight to the merchant itself. Instead, it contacts the merchant's acquiring banks. The acquiring bank, which is financially responsible for the merchant, is now the one on the hook. If the acquiring banks don't fix the problem, Mastercard can give them massive fines or place them in a special monitoring program. So Mastercard pressures the banks and the banks pressure Valve. This turns into the acquiring bank doing its own investigation, like contacting the merchant directly. They will give them a warning citing the specific rule that's being broken, like in this case, Mastercard's Rule 5.12.7. A way that they can make these merchants listen is simply by holding all their funds. So this is the warning system. It's why these big companies like Mastercard can sit back and act like they are not responsible for moderating content, because they make the banks do it instead. But what happens if the merchant like Valve refuses to comply? Or if the bank decides the problem is just too big? Well, the bank will just flat out terminate the merchant's account. And once that happens, the bank is required to add the merchant to the match list. Match stands for Member Alert to Control High-Risk Merchants. It's a confidential database managed by Mastercard. It's so private that a merchant like Valve would never have access to it. It's a tool for acquiring banks to screen other merchants. A company can't get on the match list without their account being terminated first, and that termination must be for a specific reason. The reason code used in this case would likely be violation of standards or reason code 10, which is a direct result of breaking a rule like 5.12.7. In Mastercard's entire 484-page rulebook, the only mention of the match system is for this very rule. The rule that basically says Mastercard can remove any content they don't like. So, if an acquiring bank terminates service with a merchant, they would need to put them on the match list that could take up to 5 years or even longer to get taken off of, even if the merchant started following the rules, like what we've seen with Steam, adding Rule 15 and removing tons of adult content. Being on the match list doesn't necessarily mean every acquiring bank will have to stop doing business with you, but you will definitely be under more pressure to follow the rules. So how does this connect to PayPal? Even though the termination was for one of PayPal's acquiring banks, the acquiring bank would still be obligated to report Valve to the match list, especially if they have any connection to Mastercard. This is because the bank views the merchant's overall risk profile, not just their risk on a single platform. A problematic merchant on PayPal is still a problematic merchant who could cause issues with Mastercard. The match list is designed to prevent risky merchants from simply moving to another payment processor after being terminated. Imagine it as a big warning that pretty much says, watch out with working with this company, they are high risk. Now, this brings in the question, who are these acquiring banks? While PayPal has hundreds of partners, the fact that only non-major currencies were affected gives us a big clue. The most likely candidates are a few global payment companies that handle a massive number of transactions for PayPal in different regions. Going by PayPal's partners, the ones that seem most likely to be involved include PPRO, dLocal, Adyen, and WorldPay. But we won't know exactly which one it was just due to no one saying an exact name yet. These are all global payment processors with close ties to both PayPal and Mastercard. PPRO specializes in local payments for emerging markets, and dLocal is a giant in Latin America and Africa. Both have direct partnerships with Mastercard. Adyen and WorldPay are also massive global acquirers. They not only process credit card payments but also provide services to other companies like PayPal. Their direct connections to both PayPal and Mastercard make them the most logical ones responsible that we can name right now. Unless someone like Valve wants to come out and tell us the exact bank, which it was. So when we talk about a bank terminating its service with Steam, it wasn't just a small bank in Brazil or a bank in Poland and a bank in India all deciding independently to cut off Valve at the same time. The termination likely came from one of these bigger global payment processors. So now that we know all this information, it points to a single conclusion. First, Valve's own statement explicitly state that the PayPal termination is related to what we've previously commented surrounding Mastercard. This means the core reason for the PayPal termination is the same as the reason Mastercard's acquiring banks pressured Valve to begin with, all over specific adult games on the platform. So now that one of these major global acquiring banks has terminated its service with Steam, this kind of serious termination is the exact type of event that would require a mandatory report to the match list. So after this bank pulled out of Steam, they would have put Valve on this blacklist. So these financial companies are able to crack down on content they don't like, and the match list is their most powerful tool for doing so. For Valve, being on the match list isn't a good thing. When finding new payment processors that are involved in this system, they will likely be seen as a risky client and face much higher fees. And the listing can last for 5 years or even longer. But the bigger picture here is the immense power of these financial companies who work together to get the content they don't like removed. So while official confirmation is impossible due to Mastercard's match list being confidential, what we know from Valve's own statement and an understanding of the payment system tells us it's highly likely that Valve is now on the match list, seeing as a major acquiring bank has terminated service, which is exactly how you get on the list. Even though Valve added the new rule and got rid of a bunch of games, that still wouldn't be enough to just instantly get off the list either. So what will happen next for Steam? We will have to see.